When I was a kid, my mother's favorite song was a country tune called "I Always Loved the Rain." Catchy as it was, it never spoke to me. In fact, I hated the rain. It ruined ball games and picnics as a kid, made driving a hassle as an adult, and ironically, it's how I ended up uncovering my ex-wife's affair. A sudden thunderstorm hit just as I'd started my Saturday golf game. I'm not much of a golfer, but I enjoy the exercise. Marla, my wife, used to come with me, but about a year ago, she decided her Saturday mornings had better uses. Turning back for home to escape the downpour, I found out exactly what, or rather, who, had captured her interest. Opening the door, I walked in on Marla and her boss, Curtis, in a half-dressed embrace on our living room couch. If I'd had my golf clubs with me, I might have been tempted to use them. As they scrambled to get their clothes back on, Marla fixed me with a look, as if waiting for a reaction. "Don't you have anything to say?" she asked, hands on her hips. I stepped aside and gestured toward the open door. "Just 2 words. Get out." Curtis bolted, but Marla lingered, tears brimming in her eyes. "Can we talk?" she pleaded. "I'm sorry, Travis. I've got nowhere to go." I stared at her, feeling the hurt and anger swirl inside me. "Then go wherever he goes, because I'm calling his wife next." I held myself together as she packed her things, but it was harder when I dialed Curtis's home. His wife, Cindy, answered. "Mrs. Underwood? It's Travis Coleman," I said, managing a steady tone. "Sorry to intrude, but I think we should meet. There are things you need to know." She sighed heavily, her voice carrying the weight of suspicion. "My husband and your wife," she murmured. "I'd already found your number in his call logs and wanted to believe it was work-related. I'll call you back. He just walked in." Nearly an hour passed before Cindy called again. In that time, I wavered between anger and sorrow. Marla had been the one person I'd loved almost as much as myself. Apparently, that wasn't enough. When Cindy finally rang back, she sounded just as devastated as I felt. "Tomorrow, let's meet for lunch," she suggested, her voice steely. "I'm seeing a lawyer Monday to file for divorce and want Curtis served at his office." I chuckled darkly. "I'm already preparing my own papers. Divorce is ugly business. This one's going to be the worst yet." The next day, I arrived at the restaurant only to find Cindy visibly pregnant. My anger simmered as she approached, and I couldn't contain a sharp remark. "Just so you know," I said, my voice tight, "the at-fault spouse can be made to pay legal fees. I've brought a list of lawyers who'll help, but I think I'll find you someone more ruthless." To my surprise, she managed a calm smile. "Don't worry, I have plenty of anger myself these days. Half the time, I want him castrated, and the other half, I can barely get out of bed." I nodded, the dark humor easing the tension between us. "I thought about bringing my golf club down on both of them yesterday," I admitted. Cindy raised an eyebrow, giving a slight laugh. "That would solve one problem, but bring a whole new set. For now, let's stick to legal weapons." I pulled out a stack of papers. I accessed Curtis's email. Here's proof of the whole affair. I haven't read them yet. I'm not sure I want to. Cindy glanced through the pages, her expression hardening. "We should take turns being there when they come to collect their things. You at my house when he's around, and me at yours with Marla." It felt almost poetic. "A perfectly diabolical plan," I said with a grin. "And here's some free legal advice. Before you go to the lawyer, go to the bank. Leave a few hundred in your account and move the rest." She smiled faintly. "Already done. I transferred nearly everything last night." "Well played. But maybe leave a bit more," I suggested. "The court'll appreciate it if you don't completely drain the account. It'll make you look fair and magnanimous in front of a judge." Cindy smirked. "I'm feeling anything but fair. The fact that he's still breathing is already generous." I couldn't help but admire her spirit. "Still, judges tend to reward appearances. Just keep it in mind." She sighed, her anger softening momentarily. "I'm 8 months pregnant, and instead of helping paint the nursery, he was with your wife. The paint fumes make me sick." "Tell you what," I offered, struck with a moment of inspiration. "After we check your bank setup, I'll paint your nursery. I could use the distraction, and I'm taking the week off work." Cindy gave a small smile, patting her belly. "It's a deal, but if we don't eat soon, you'll have one very cranky pregnant woman on your hands." After a lunch where Cindy managed to polish off most of the appetizer, all of her entree, and even some of mine, we returned to my place. Once there, she immediately began searching through the computer. It didn't take her long to locate the money management program and initiate a quick transfer from checking to savings. "What the hell?" Cindy's voice echoed from the makeshift office room. I rushed back with 2 water bottles in hand, worried that her labor might be starting. But, just like the day before, I froze in the doorway, my mouth open. Right there on the computer screen was a video of Cindy's husband with my wife, clear as day. They'd filmed themselves. Cindy found dozens of videos. Frantically, Cindy began hunting for a CD to burn a copy of the evidence when my phone rang. It was Marla. I handed the phone to Cindy. "Have anything you'd like to say to Marla?" I asked, with a wry smile. Cindy's face lit up with a mix of anger and malice, though she quickly stifled her initial urge to unleash her rage when she saw me shaking my head. I silently mouthed, "Surprise," and she caught on, a devilish glint flashing in her eyes. "You're a real piece of work," she said into the phone, her voice simmering. "I'm a week away from having a baby, and you're hooking up with my husband?" I stifled a laugh as Cindy smirked. Marla must have asked a question because Cindy paused and responded, "I talked to Travis yesterday. He came over today to do everything for me and the baby, the things that your perfect partner was supposed to handle. You know, you could have just asked. I'd have swapped you willingly. Enjoy your prize, Marla, while I take the gem you didn't value." As Cindy recounted Marla's reaction, her eyes flashed with vindictive satisfaction. Then, with an exaggerated sigh, she relayed, "Marla says she needs to retrieve some work files from the computer." Barely containing my amusement, I bit the inside of my cheek. "Tell her she can have the entire machine. I'll leave it outside on the porch before I leave for work Wednesday morning. She's welcome to pick it up any time after 7. We exchanged approving nods. This would give us extra time to comb through the files thoroughly. "Oh, and let her know Curtis says hi," I added. "I spoke with a few of my former clients, and they'll be reaching out to him too." This time, it was Cindy's turn to hold back a chuckle. With her voice dripping with mock surprise, she said, "Really? Well, I figured you two couldn't wait to set up house. It's not exactly a secret now." As she spoke, she rolled her eyes, informing me that Curtis wasn't with Marla. "According to her, it was a one-time fling," she added with a smirk, "and she hasn't seen him since he bolted out yesterday." "Chivalrous of him to stick around and protect her," I mused sarcastically. "After what he did to you, I guess we shouldn't be surprised." The fire faded from Cindy's eyes, replaced by a sad acceptance. "Actually, it was a surprise," she murmured, almost to herself. We sat in silence before Cindy quietly ended the call, turning back to the computer to mask her emotions. As she scrolled through files, I took the opportunity to update the alarm code, just in case Marla attempted any unannounced visits. Then we headed to Staples, where we each bought a new computer and an external hard drive. Cindy, a true computer expert, managed to back up my entire hard drive before it was time to drive her home. The rain was pouring down as I pulled up to her house. "We need to be careful," she warned as I parked. I agreed, even though I didn't fully grasp her meaning just then. "They've shown a talent for deception," she continued. "Who knows, they might even have someone watching our houses now that they know we're in this together." Suddenly I understood. "In their eyes, we're the bad guys now," Cindy laughed. "On sleazy lawyer, that's a rare breed. And don't worry, I'm still coming over tomorrow to paint the baby's room. When the time comes, I'll be right there." Her eyes filled with tears, and she whispered, "Thanks. Let's just get through tomorrow." After escorting her to the door, I offered to come in and check the house to ensure everything was safe. She seemed relieved, nodding gratefully. Once inside, I verified that she had also updated her alarm code. With a reassuring pat on her shoulder, I left. "Tomorrow, I'm hitting the bank and courthouse. Do you want to file the paperwork together?" I asked. Cindy shook her head. "I still need to find a lawyer, and it might take a few days. But I will go to the bank to make sure everything is in order and make it clear that Curtis has no access to our accounts. I can't represent you, but I can advise you," I offered. "I could put together a packet you could file yourself, if that helps. You don't have to finalize anything now, especially with the baby on the way." Cindy considered this. "You read minds, don't you?" she asked, a faint smile tugging at her lips. I chuckled. "Hardly. I barely manage my own," she smiled. "I'd appreciate the help. I'll meet you at the courthouse at lunch." Back at my car, I grabbed my briefcase and handed her a copy of the papers I planned to file in the morning. "Look these over if you can. It lists a separation date, and I requested a 2/3 share, given that I'm the primary earner in a short marriage. I don't know your finances, but I doubt Curtis makes enough as a high school counselor to afford your place." Cindy laughed. "No, I'm the breadwinner. I work in programming and networking. I make about 10 times what he does. I couldn't help but smile. Maybe that's why he was slumming it with my wife. Needed a dose of reality. Cindy rolled her eyes. Did you watch those videos? They connected with a lot more than reality. Shall we make copies for the school board after we're through with them? Although we didn't visit the school board that Monday morning, I did pay a visit to an old adversary, Detective Lieutenant Colin McKinney. What do you want, Travis? He muttered, glancing up. I'm up to date on my alimony and I haven't spoken to the ex in a year. I know, I said, holding back a grin. This is personal. His eyes narrowed, but he didn't move. I need to leave a potential piece of evidence with you, I explained, avoiding eye contact. A receipt and a chain of custody form would be appreciated. McKinney leaned forward. Is this for a criminal or civil case? Civil. If it were criminal, I'd have handed it to any officer. I came to you because this is important. With a nod, he motioned for me to proceed. McKinney sighed, but he accepted the CD and sealed it in an evidence bag. He called over a patrol officer to witness the chain of custody signature before I headed out. How long do you need me to hold this? McKinney asked. As I reached the door, I shrugged. With luck, I'll call you in a day or two, and you can toss it. I just need it somewhere safe and out of my hands. I didn't wait for his response. Years ago, I had represented his ex-wife in their messy divorce, and it hadn't gone well for either of us. She had led me to believe things that later proved untrue, and by the time I realized, McKinney's reputation had taken a hit. I'd tried to repair the damage, but some things couldn't be undone. Still, he had a strong sense of integrity, and I trusted him with this. Shaking off the memories, I made my way to meet Cindy at the bank. We were among the first customers through the doors at Citizens Bank. In less than 20 minutes, we'd opened new accounts, each leaving a small amount for our unfaithful spouses. The bank manager smirked as he informed us someone was trying to access the accounts from another branch. Apparently, the callers were furious to find the funds nearly gone. Guess they should have acted faster, Cindy said with a sly smile. Curtis didn't waste time getting to Coleman House on Saturday. An hour later, we filed our divorce paperwork at the county clerk's office, paying the $170 fee and arranging for a constable to serve the papers on Tuesday, the last day of school. It felt like poetic justice. Afterward, we celebrated with a late lunch and a trip to Lowe's, picking out paint for the nursery. Cindy tired easily, so we made frequent stops, which extended our shopping trip. Marla and Curtis both left messages on our phones, but we deleted them without listening. I'd already heard every excuse during my time as an attorney, and Cindy didn't care to hear anything Curtis had to say. The rest of Monday and Tuesday were spent preparing the nursery, painting the walls a soft sand color with pale green trim. When I joked that the green would match baby poop, Cindy didn't find it nearly as funny as I did. By Wednesday morning, I remembered my promise to Marla about returning the computer. Cindy had finished with it Monday, and she had shown me how to take it apart and pack it up. As I opened the door at 6:30 to place it on the porch, I came face to face with Marla. I said after 7 a.m., I noted, unfazed. It's not after 7 a.m. Marla's face was somber. You had me served at school. That was awful, I shrugged. I had no address for you, and Cindy had no address for Curtis. It was the best we could manage. I went to an attorney, she replied, and he said you're wrong. We never committed adultery. It was our first meeting. What you saw was as far as it got, a little kissing, some touching. Legally, it doesn't count as adultery. I smiled. So, you're saying you never slept with Curtis? She nodded emphatically. Never. Then I'll consider the no-fault option, I replied, keeping my thoughts to myself. In our state, a no-fault divorce meant a 50-50th split of marital assets, while an at-fault divorce, adultery included, gave the non-offending party at least 67%. Marla either didn't understand or didn't care. I want to come home, she said, her voice softening. I sighed, as if giving it serious thought. Actually, I think that's a good idea. She looked up, clearly hopeful. I don't want the house, I continued. It's filled with nothing but bad memories for me. You can have it. I'll find an apartment this week and take what I want. If there's anything missing, let me know. You can take possession on Sunday at noon. She blinked. I already know something important will be missing. Oh? I asked, my tone hardening. How do you know? It's not about things, she replied quietly. It's about you. I want to come home with you, but you'll be gone. You don't have a home with me anymore. You can keep the house, or sell it if you'd like. I've paid 3 months on the mortgage, so it's up to date. I'll pay you alimony. $1,000 a month for 24 months. 1 month for each month we were married. That's my best offer. Marla's face hardened. If you're unwilling to work things out, we'll go to court and I'll claim half your net worth. You may be an attorney, but I know my rights. Later, as I arrived at Cindy's, she opened the door with an exasperated look. You just missed my soon-to-be ex, she muttered. He wants half. I almost told him about the videos. I grinned. Idle threats, Cindy. We have leverage. Let them state their case under oath, and we'll handle it from there. I'm still hoping they'll come to their senses and take our offer. Cindy had spent hours with me on Tuesday, drafting the most favorable terms we could reasonably offer. She wanted to leave them with nothing, but I knew that wasn't feasible. The courts rarely left a defendant entirely destitute. It only led to more trouble. Still, we both suspected neither of them would settle for what we'd offered. Their sudden financial hardships likely explained why Marla was now so eager to reconcile. I need to find an apartment, I said, glancing at Cindy, as soon as I finish the baby's room. Can you help with the classifieds? She smirked and pulled out the paper. Already on it when he showed up. He actually asked about counseling, and I told him he might need a stronger reality check. I laughed. Good one. The paper mentions a complex about 5 minutes from here with a pool. Might be worth checking out. Anywhere will do, I replied. Once I'm back at the office, my hours will be rough. Cindy nodded. I know the feeling, but with small fry on the way, I'll be spending less time there. You should think about it too. Money isn't everything. It was after midnight on Friday when Cindy called to say she was in labor. Living just a few blocks away, I was at her place in 10 minutes. We had rehearsed, but it was pure chaos. The 13 days since meeting Cindy had been a whirlwind. I'd painted the nursery, assembled the furniture, and moved into an apartment. I'd endured calls from Marla's attorney, threats from Curtis's, and supported Cindy through similar struggles. Holding Cindy's hand as we entered the delivery room, I felt less than thrilled at the idea of staying. I'd planned to be there until things got serious, then step back. But as the rain poured outside, it became clear that fate had other plans. I kept my back turned during the birth, gripping Cindy's hand tightly and whispering soothing words as she pushed through the final stages. When the doctor offered me the chance to cut the umbilical cord, I politely declined, but I accepted the small, bundled miracle that was Cindy's daughter, Gloria Underwood. Once the doctor had given her a brief moment with her mother. Gloria was beautiful. I'd taken Cindy's advice and significantly cut back on my hours, a choice that didn't thrill the partners at my law firm. But I enjoyed my free time, even if it wasn't quite leisurely. I'd become Gloria's unofficial babysitter while Cindy worked from home. Every couple of hours, she'd pause to feed Gloria, my cue to step out momentarily. But in the evenings, she felt comfortable leaving the little one entirely in my care. I'd always wanted children, but Marla had been firm on waiting, much to my disappointment. Cindy mentioned Curtis had been hesitant about fatherhood too, showing a mix of disappointment and detachment when she told him about the pregnancy. For my part, being called Uncle Travis by little Gloria would be more than enough. Meanwhile, Marla and Curtis continued their legal assault. Their lawyer filed a counterclaim alleging infidelity between Cindy and me, a ridiculous accusation that the court accepted nonetheless, forcing us to defend against it. Cindy and I shared a laugh over it, but the process itself was an irritation. Curtis occasionally tried to see his daughter, though Cindy held primary custody, and he hadn't taken steps to formalize visitation rights. In the first few months, he'd call Cindy weekly, hoping to arrange a visit. Each time, Cindy asked me to be there for support. As for Marla, she'd call twice a week, either to negotiate for more money or to ask basic questions about managing the house. Questions like turning on the furnace or installing storm windows. Our first deposition was a complete farce. Marla's attorney, a boyish-looking young man who seemed barely out of school, had expected to control the pace of the proceedings. He was sorely mistaken. My attorney, a no-nonsense powerhouse who thrived in confrontations, handled him with ease. She'd never even heard of Marla's lawyer, and neither had I. I simply don't see how you can allege adultery, the young lawyer stated, before I'd even settled in my chair. She was sleeping with someone else, I responded curtly, the boy visibly flushed. That is incorrect, he stammered, attempting to regain his composure. Allow me to inform you of the legal definition of adultery. I started to retort, but my attorney touched my arm. I've got this, she said, her tone sharp. Mr. Coleman manages dozens of divorce cases monthly. I'm sure he understands the legal definition better than you do. And, for the record, he knows adultery when he sees it. At her tone, the young lawyer's blush deepened. Remind me to bring my client list to our next lunch meeting, I added, winking. My attorney nudged me playfully. Turning to Marla, I seized the opportunity. Marla, I've been more than fair. You won't get a no-fault divorce here, and you know it. My initial offer included the house and $24,000 in alimony, but every lie you've told since our separation has shaved $10 a month off that offer. My final offer, which stands until Monday afternoon, is $480 per month and the house. If this goes to court, I'll pursue full possession of the house. Marla's face flushed with anger. I have not lied to you, not once. I never slept with Curtis before we separated. I nodded, pulling out a notepad and making a mark for yet another lie. $470 a month now. Keep going, and soon you'll owe me money. Screw you, Marla snapped. We'll see you in court. Before we left, my attorney leaned forward. I'd like a couple of points on the record, she said. This is a formal deposition, and you're under oath. For the record, Miss Patton, did you have a sexual relationship with Curtis Underwood prior to June 3rd? Marla's voice was shrill. Absolutely not, she almost shouted before leaning back with a smug look. That's all I needed, my attorney said, gesturing for me to rise. Marla's lawyer wasn't done, however. Did you have a sexual relationship with Cindy Underwood prior to June 3rd? He asked, smirking. I'd expected this and was prepared. I have not had a sexual relationship with Cindy Underwood before or after June 3rd. In fact, I first met her on June 4th, when she was 9 months pregnant. Our relationship is not sexual, her attorney leaned forward. We have photos of you leaving her house. We have photos of her leaving your apartment. We know what's going on. Are you sure Gloria isn't your daughter? My temper flared, and before my attorney could restrain me, I was out of my seat. Listen here, you little twit, I growled. I don't want to see a single camera pointed at either of them. You have no idea the mess you'll be in if you make me your enemy. Marla, maybe check what Cindy does for a living before you throw this deal away. You have until 5 p.m. Monday to rethink this, I finished, walking out. Monday came and went without a response, but I received a summons to appear in Judge Tricia Barton's chambers the following day. Marla's attorney had lodged a formal complaint about my threats, and I was to attend with my attorney in tow. Marla's counteroffer also arrived that morning. She wanted the house and a $5,000 lump sum. Cindy received a similar set of demands from Curtis, which infuriated her. Apparently, we weren't the only ones sharing notes. In Judge Barton's chambers, I listened to Marla's young attorney present his case, explaining how my threats had crossed a line. He's an officer of the court, the lawyer argued. Threatening another officer is grounds for disciplinary action, my attorney replied smoothly. He was present as a plaintiff, not an officer of the court. And frankly, if Mr. Stokes keeps his attitude up, he'll find plenty of people sharing Mr. Coleman's sentiments. Your Honor, if Mr. Stokes doesn't learn a little professionalism, you might need an extra judge just for handling his complaints. Judge Barton looked at me. What did you say to him, Mr. Coleman? I met her eyes and grinned. I called him a sniveling twit and warned him that he didn't want me as an enemy. Judge Barton burst into laughter. Mr. Stokes, she said, shaking her head, being called a twit is hardly actionable. If anything, it sounds like Mr. Coleman was right. As for the enemy part, I'd suggest you listen to that advice. The young lawyer's face flushed, and he struggled to respond. Well, my client was turned away by multiple attorneys before she came to me. I guess the good old boys club extends to women now, too. I'll be filing for a judge outside this county to handle the case. Judge Barton's eyes narrowed, but I spoke up first. Consider this some friendly advice, I said, leveling a calm gaze. Save that kind of talk for your buddies or your clients. If you bring it into a judge's chambers again, make sure you have a toothbrush handy. He looked utterly baffled, as if he hadn't fully grasped my point. I was about to continue, but Judge Barton cut in sharply. Contempt of court, she said, her voice firm. That means I lock you up until I decide to let you out. Mr. Coleman is right again. When you address this court, it had better be with your honor or ma'am, and your tone had better be respectful, even if you don't mean it. Grow up if you want to play in the big leagues. We don't coddle whiners here. Now, regarding your request, it's out of order. You may file a formal motion, but I'll deny it. The young attorney's face flushed as he fumbled for words. Judge Barton continued, Mr. Coleman already took steps to have us recuse ourselves, which was done out of consideration for your client. Now, get out. Marla sat quietly, her face visibly paling as the judge spoke. When we left, she refused to look me in the eye. About your offer, I said to the top of her head. Fat chance. With fall came a whirlwind of activity. I found myself spending 3 or 4 evenings a week with Cindy and baby Gloria. I learned to make bottles, change diapers, and care for Gloria independently while Cindy took short breaks. I genuinely enjoyed those moments, even when Gloria was fussy. A quick walk and a silly lullaby would usually calm her right down. My feelings towards Cindy grew more complex. I knew what I wanted the relationship to be, but she treated me more like family than anything romantic. Still, we fell into a comfortable rhythm. Dinner together most nights, movies, or quiet conversations after Gloria went to bed. The presence of nosy photographers near our homes certainly discouraged anything beyond friendship, and the routine remained easy and pleasant. Finally, in January, the cases of Coleman versus Coleman and Underwood v. Underwood landed on the family court docket. Marla had made a last-ditch attempt to renegotiate, but I was done playing nice. The private investigator stunt had been the last straw. Curtis had stopped visiting Gloria altogether, perhaps fearing child support claims. Cindy had held off on pursuing that option, knowing a judge from another county would hear both cases on the same day, mine in the morning and hers in the afternoon. We both hoped the morning session would settle things sufficiently. Under a clear, cloudless sky, Cindy and I entered the courthouse. Marla's counterclaim fell flat as the court dismissed it without comment. She had some photos of me leaving Cindy's house and vice versa, but nothing remotely suggestive. Our case was straightforward. Marla had denied any affair with Curtis Underwood under oath, and we kept our trump cards, the videos and emails, ready in case they were needed. I testified briefly about finding evidence of adultery well before June 3rd, but cross-examination didn't press me on specifics. When Marla was questioned, she denied the affair both on direct and cross-examination. We have a rebuttal witness, Your Honor, my attorney announced. The plaintiff calls Detective Lieutenant Colin McKinney. Since McKinney was a rebuttal witness, we hadn't been required to list him in advance, leaving the defense with no idea of his testimony. After being sworn in, Detective McKinney glared in my direction. What is your relationship to my client? My attorney asked him. None, he replied curtly. In fact, I dislike him. Do you have a professional relationship with Mr. Coleman? Absolutely not. He's a divorce attorney, and I'm in criminal cases. I know him only because he represented my ex-wife in our divorce. When was the last time you saw Mr. Coleman? She continued. Marla's attorney jumped to his feet. Objection. Your Honor, may we please move to the point? The judge gave my attorney an expectant look. Your Honor, Detective McKinney has critical information bearing directly on Miss Patton's claims, she explained. I am merely establishing his impartiality and providing a timeline. Oh, I have an interest, McKinney said with a hint of a smirk. I hope she takes him for all he's worth. The judge shot him a warning look, but allowed the questioning to continue. When was the last time you saw Mr. Coleman? My attorney asked again. McKinney flipped open his notebook. June 5th of last year. And did he leave anything in your possession that day? Yes, a compact disc. Do you know what's on the disc? No idea. He asked me to hold it, had me sign a chain of custody form, and sealed it in an evidence bag. Did the disc leave your possession at any time? It was always in my safe. No one else has access to it. I even changed the combination after my previous secretary retired. Do you have the disc with you now? McKinney nodded and pulled the sealed evidence bag from his jacket, along with the chain of custody form stapled to it. We offer plaintiffs exhibits 1 and 2 in rebuttal to Miss Patton's prior testimony. Marla's attorney immediately objected, but the judge overruled him. I saw Marla's face drain of color as she whispered frantically to her lawyer, whose face was now as red as hers was pale. Your Honor, we request an in-camera review of the disc contents, my attorney stated. The plaintiff has no further questions for Detective McKinney. Despite 15 minutes of cross-examination, Marla's lawyer couldn't shake McKinney's testimony. An experienced witness, McKinney had little trouble handling the young attorney's bluster. The judge called for a recess while she reviewed the disc in her chambers. Scheduling her ruling for 11:30 a.m. as we waited in the hall, I saw Cindy pacing with Gloria in her sling. I gave her a thumbs up as I approached. Well, I think the afternoon session might be unnecessary, I said. But you won't get to see Curtis's reaction. Cindy grinned, handing me the baby. Oh, I'll still get the pleasure of watching him come groveling. That'll be satisfaction enough. At that moment, Marla and her attorney approached, followed by Curtis and his lawyer. Marla looked desperate. I'll accept the original offer, she said quickly. I still think you're bluffing, but Curtis says Cindy could have faked something on the computer. Cindy gave a mirthless laugh. Faked? Do you really think we would go to the trouble of finding a police officer just to stash some fake videos? Believe me, you're finished. I smiled, gesturing for Cindy to calm down, but she continued undeterred. You two thought you could cheat, lie, and get more than you deserved. Well, guess what? Welcome to the big leagues. You're going to end up with half of whatever crumbs the judge leaves, minus the house. If you don't like it, we'll play round 2 in court this afternoon. The court records won't look good on you, Curtis. Running off on a 9-month pregnant wife for some fling. You should thank Travis for stepping in with Gloria, or you'd be looking at $500 a month in child support. Curtis and Marla exchanged a helpless look. Their faces said it all. They were out of moves, and the game was ours. Curtis stood frozen, his mouth agape. I couldn't blame him. Even I was taken aback by Cindy's outburst. She was on fire, and I had no intention of stepping in her path. Curtis's lawyer seemed to realize the situation. Half of what she receives minus the house, he agreed, sounding resigned. Oh, and Curtis here will cover my legal fees, Cindy added sharply. Since this is an at-fault divorce, that's on him. The lawyer nodded, and Cindy turned to me with a mischievous grin. I assume you're charging me your usual rate for all this advice, she teased. Rumor has it you charge $600 an hour. My attorney says your time is as valuable as hers. I couldn't hold back a chuckle, and I noticed Curtis calculating in his head. Cindy just took my arm and led me away from the group. I'm sorry, she said. I shouldn't have made that decision for you. I know you didn't want her to leave with nothing. I just thought they deserved it. But it wasn't my place. I patted her arm. It's all right. You were right, and I was wrong. Mark it down. It may be the last time you hear it from me. She laughed. Oh, I doubt that. You said the same thing when we finished Gloria's room. You admitted you were wrong about the colors. I nodded, smiling, ready to continue when my attorney approached with Marla. She'll settle for $500 a month in alimony for 2 years, my attorney said, smiling. She keeps the house and 1/4 of the joint checking account. Still holding Gloria, I attempted to shrug. You don't get it. An at-fault divorce caps her at 1/3 of the assets. I could force her to sell the house and claim 2/3. She should be thankful I'm not demanding attorney fees. Marla's lawyer turned away, shaking his head, and Marla looked ready to cry. The judge's ruling was even more severe than I'd expected. Miss Patton, Judge Barton began, after reviewing that CD, I am appalled. You have misled this court with the clear intent of financial gain. Mr. Coleman extended several generous offers, and you refused each one in pursuit of more. Now, here is my ruling. The marital assets will be split, 94% to Mr. Coleman, 6% to Miss Patton. As the primary wage earner, alimony is warranted. I order Mr. Coleman to pay you $5 per month for 2 months. Mr. Coleman has also been paying $1,000 monthly for the last 7 months. That amount is to be returned minus $10. Both parties are barred from altering their insurance beneficiaries. Miss Patton, you may retain the marital home for 5 years, during which you will cover all costs. The house will be sold after that time, with 75% of proceeds to Mr. Coleman and 25% to you. An appraisal must be completed within 30 days at Miss Patton's expense, and the appraisal value will set the resale floor. Any deficit will come from Miss Patton's share. Additionally, Miss Patton is to pay all reasonable legal fees for this case. Mr. Coleman attorney will submit an itemized list within 60 days. Court is adjourned. I turned to see Cindy in the last row, smiling and motioning subtly toward Marla. Marla sat in shock, tears streaming down her face, while Curtis rubbed his temples as if his head might explode. I couldn't resist a final jab. As I passed them, I turned to my attorney and said, loud enough for all to hear, "That's one expensive piece." Cindy and I celebrated by taking our attorneys out for dinner that evening. As we relaxed, Cindy surprised us all. "Let them stew for a day or two," she said. "Then call Curtis's lawyer and let him know I'll waive the money he owes me and won't seek child support if he stays out of our lives." I raised an eyebrow. "What happened to eviscerate him?" She smiled. We did. But remember what you said? Leave them something or they'll have nothing to lose. I tilted my head, grinning. So now you're taking my advice? One-time deal, my friend, she replied, her eyes glinting with humor. I can't stop you from offering advice, but I don't have to follow it. Over the next few weeks, life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Cindy and I found our own routine. I'd watch Gloria while Cindy went to the gym or took a night off, and we'd share dinner almost every evening. I looked forward to our time together, even on quiet nights when we'd just watch a movie or chat over coffee after Gloria was asleep. Our relationship remained undefined but close. Perhaps out of respect for what we'd each been through, neither of us pushed things further. We found contentment in our shared routine, letting things evolve naturally without expectations. That spring, we gathered to celebrate Gloria's first birthday. It was a simple affair with just a few of Cindy's close friends, yet it felt deeply meaningful. Watching Cindy laugh and Gloria's delighted reactions, I realized how much I cherished these moments. This was the kind of family closeness I'd missed with Marla, who had always prioritized ambition over these small joys. But with Cindy, everything felt balanced and right. After everyone had left and Gloria was asleep, Cindy and I found ourselves sitting together in her living room, wrapped in the warmth of the day. I wanted to tell her how grateful I was for her and Gloria in my life, but I hesitated, unsure if it was the right time. It was Cindy who broke the silence. I've been thinking about what comes next, she said softly. I turned to her, surprised. Oh? She nodded, a gentle smile on her face. You've been so good to Gloria and me. I know it hasn't been easy with everything we've both gone through. I shrugged, feeling a bit sheepish. It's been good for me too, more than you know. Her eyes softened, and she placed her hand on mine. Travis, I know you've been patient, waiting for me to figure things out, and I think I know what I want. My heart pounded as she leaned in, her face close to mine. I saw the same vulnerability in her eyes that I felt in my own heart, and at that moment, all hesitation vanished. Cindy, I whispered, I'm here. Whatever you need, whatever you want, I'm here. And then she closed the distance, our kiss filled with the emotions we'd both been holding back. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a commitment, an unspoken promise to build a life together. From that night forward, Cindy and I became partners in every sense. We shared the responsibilities of parenting, balanced work, and began building a life together. We each maintained our own pursuits, but our lives became more and more intertwined, bringing a satisfaction I hadn't known was possible. I moved into a larger apartment to make space for Cindy and Gloria whenever they stayed over. And over time, the sleepovers became more frequent until we realized we were essentially living together. One warm weekend in early summer, I took Cindy and Gloria to the park. Watching Gloria toddle about, chasing after a butterfly with laughter bubbling out of her, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. I turned to Cindy, who was watching her daughter with the same look of love. And in that instant, I knew this was the family I'd longed for. Cindy, I said, swallowing back the wave of emotion, I don't want to go another day without you. Will you marry me? Her eyes filled with tears as she nodded. Yes, Travis, I can't imagine my life without you. We celebrated that night, just the three of us. And as Gloria finally drifted to sleep, Cindy and I held each other, marveling at how far we'd come. Through betrayal and heartache, we'd found a love built on respect, shared experiences, and an unwavering commitment to each other. In the end, our past marriages had taught us invaluable lessons about honesty, loyalty, and the deep fulfillment that comes from being with someone who truly understands you. And as we began this new chapter together, we both knew we'd found something real, something lasting, something that was ours to cherish. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, comment, and hit that subscribe button for more of Love, Lust, Lies.